It's time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. I know that I promised that we would have tempo ticker episodes aside from news episodes, but when you have so many things happening and the way that I formulated it with going alternate interviews to news, it's just too much. So this episode, we will do the tempo ticker here at the front, and then the back end will be so much news, you'll be like, man, couldn't they have just done 2 episodes? And the answer is yes, we could have. We just didn't. Corey K. Ward, the Pharaoh himself, here to help me out with the temple ticker. And by that, I mean, I basically just ask you questions about the just volumes of knowledge that you know about the temple. Thank you for being here, sir.
Hey, glad to do it.
Now, we were just talking before we started recording, look forward to in the future, because the Culture Hall available on YouTube, a clearer, more 4K Corey K. Ward. That's what the K in Corey K. Ward stands for. 4K. There will be, I was going to say KKKK, but then I decided that probably doesn't sound the way that we wanted to. Let's move on. Temples from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It seems like we are doing so much all of the time, and there is no end in sight. Take me to Peru.
Yeah, on January 14th, the Lima Los Olivos Peru Temple was dedicated. It's the 187th temple of the church. The dedication was presided by D Todd Christofferson. Yeah.
Now, D Todd, he speaks Spanish. Is that what I understand? Is fluent in Spanish?
He's pretty fluent in Spanish. If you ever flip your journal conference to Spanish, you'll hear that he records his talk in Spanish and then dubs it over when he's speaking.
But yeah, no like mission connection to Peru, because I want to say that he served in Argentina.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. So he dedicated the Peru Temple, which is significant for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, so it is the 4th temple in Peru, but it's also the 2nd temple in Lima. And in the past, I don't know, a few decades, the church in Lima has really grown. Now it's the city outside of Utah with the most stakes, and so naturally it's also the first city outside of Utah to have 2 temples within its city limits.
And the 2 in Utah are what? South Jordan and Ochre Hills, probably, or Ochre Mountain?
Yeah, South Jordan, okay. The Jordan River and Ochre Mountain, and then Provo, which is Provo City Center.
Okay.
So,
and technically Orem is,
yeah, you could probably call it the 3rd temple of Provo if you wanted to.
Yeah, because it literally is like, and for people who don't know, it's like, all right, this is Provo right here, and then a small child could throw one of those wiffle ball to the Orem temple from a Provo city line and be able to hit that. So don't, you'll get arrested, small child. Don't do that, but that's how close those are. Okay, so Provo and South Jordan are the other 2 of those. Well, congratulations, Peru, Elder Christofferson down there. And then speaking of Orem and Elder Christofferson, he decided that he would, double dip and go again? How come he's doing that one?
I don't know. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's born in Utah Valley, so there's at least some connection to that. But it is strange that just 2 weeks in a row, he also dedicated a temple. It was also strange because when they announced the dedication of the Orem Temple, they didn't announce who would be doing it until just recently. So they kept it. I'm sure the First Presidency probably kept it open just in case, someone else wanted to do it. I don't know.
Do you think they do that? I mean, obviously there are some that are like, it's obviously going to be Elder Holland who does the St. George, rededication. There are some very obvious ones. And then is it the rest like we see in an Elders Quorum meeting where it's like, all right, temple needs to be dedicated, and everyone's kind of looking down at their phones and they're like, guys, we're still looking for a sign up on this. Who wants to go to Peru? And then, the one guy who can't stand the awkward silence goes, all right, I'll go to Peru. I guess I'll do that. I wouldn't imagine that they vie for them. I would imagine that they say that they're assigned. All right, you.
Yeah, I just think it's not made public immediately sometimes. With the case of Elder Holland, it wasn't made public for a long time because he was obviously in grave health conditions. When President Nelson dedicated Washington, D.C. It wasn't announced for a while. I think that was just to keep it open just in case something came up and he couldn't do it. Because we did see a few years back the other temple in Peru, Arequipa, President Nelson had intentions to go, and he assigned himself, I guess, to go dedicate that temple, and the last minute he got sick and Elder Suarez ended up going down. So I think with these older members of the 12, I think that they try and keep it more secret because they just don't know if a health scare is going to come up.
Sure.
So
Sure. So maybe Orem was supposed to be Elder Ballard.
maybe,
and then it didn't.
or maybe President Nelson, or I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Also interesting to note, and this will come up later in the news, but Elder Kieran was with Elder Christofferson at the Orem temple dedication. And as I understand it, and the Deseret News sort of paints it out, and again, we'll talk more into this, but it was almost like Elder Christofferson saying, all right, come along, Elder Kieran, let me show you how we do these temple dedications. Quite literally, like it seemed like a senior companion, junior companion, let me show you how we do this sort of temple dedication experience.
Yeah, I definitely think that was something that was probably happening.
Yeah. Okay.
Although you see a lot of times you see a junior apostle accompany a more senior one. But if we look at who the Orem temple is serving, there was 20 stakes that were assigned to the temple district. So basically, if you live in Vineyard or the west side of Orem, or even the northwest part of Provo, your stake was assigned. But because only 1 month away, the Provo Temple will be closing, there'll be many more stakes that will be temporarily assigned to this temple district that will use it while the Provo Temple is being rebuilt.
Sort of an odd thing, Taylorsville Temple, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute, but that's the district that I'm in or should be in because it's less than 2 miles from my house. But because Salt Lake is closed and so many people from the Salt Lake Temple are assigned south, so they'll be assigned to the Taylorsville Temple. So everyone in my neighborhood in Taylorsville is assigned to the Jordan River Temple. And everyone's like, what? Why can't we go to the one that's right there as opposed to the one that's miles away? And of course, once everything opens back up, it'll be reassigned accordingly. But it's been funny to see some of the word chatter where it's like, okay, so we haven't had one for nearly 200 years of the church, and now we have one, and I'm not allowed to go to that one. You, of course, can go to the one that isn't your district, but it's funny to see people's reaction going, the Taylorsville, my address is Taylorsville. I'm going to the Jordan River. Okay. All right. All right.
Hey, well, that's interesting. Actually, I didn't know that was the case. I guess speaking about Taylorsville, they recently announced the dedication of the temple. It'll be dedicated on June 2nd, and Elder Gerrit Gong will do that. He also did the groundbreaking. So if I'm not mistaken, he has a connection to Taylorsville. He lived there for a while. Is that right?
Oh, interesting. I don't think I knew that.
I either think he lived there after he moved to Utah, or maybe he was, I can't remember. But yeah, and then the open house will be April 13th through May 18th. So just about 5 weeks of an open house. A good
And
length.
so will that be temple number 1? Do we know what number will
Yeah,
be?
so let's see. Red Cliffs 189, Philippines 190, Pueblo 191, and then Taylorsville 192.
Okay. Okay. All right. I was pushing for us to be 200, and everybody in my ward was like, don't make us wait that long. And I said, doesn't matter. We're not assigned to that district anyway. We're still going to river. I'm a rabble rouser, as it were. Okay. I like that. June 2nd. That means no church. Means Fast Sunday will be pushed the first Sunday of June for me. And then just temples just keep rolling out as far as the summer goes.
Yeah, I trying to get in all the temple dedications before the summer break. The Cobán, Guatemala temple, it will be dedicated on June 9th, and Dale Renlund will be there. And then they'll have an open house before that, April 25th to May 11th. This will be the third temple in Guatemala. And then Salta, Argentina. So they'll have a dedication on June 16th, and that will be also D Todd Christofferson. And this is the area where he served his mission. Back then, it was only I think the North Mission and the South Mission in Argentina. So I don't know if he actually served in Salta or not, but he definitely served in that region. And the mission president, do you know who that was, Richie?
Do I know who the mission president was?
Yeah,
Joseph Smith. Brigham
almost.
Young.
It was Richard D. Scott was the
Oh,
mission
cool.
president in
Oh, I didn't
northern
know that.
Argentina, and one D Todd Christofferson was for the missionaries.
I was an assistant to the president, you can be sure. I
I'm
don't know
sure.
that. I don't
I
actually,
know.
but probably, right?
You never know. Yeah.
I'd love the story of the rebellious elder underneath one of the elders of the Quorum of the 12, and then ends up coming back through and then being like, I knew Elder Christofferson when he was driving a car through farmland and, chasing down the wild turkeys or whatever. That's something that happened in my mission. But, some sort of just wild hair that the missionary had and then, course corrected and then came back and all the things. I'd love to hear that. I won't. They don't do that. Our church, we don't talk about past transgressions, but I would love it.
Yeah, they'll have an open house May 3rd to the 18th. And this will be also the third temple in Argentina and one of the last to have a gold angel Moroni.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I
Now
think
you've seen,
this
now
was
you've
it was
seen
the
the most.
last
Oh, sorry.
was
Go
the
ahead.
last rendering to be revealed to have gold angel Moroni. But I think the Leighton temple a week later will be officially the last gold angel Moroni to be dedicated.
And you've
And then we
seen, have you seen in pictures that there is a gold Moroni on the temple?
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. All right. Do you think
I
we're
can
going to talk
confirm.
about it then? The Moroni will get laid to rest on top of the Leighton temple. Then we'll say, guys, we're going to finally talk about the elephant in the room that we're not doing this anymore.
Well, we still have that Pooter angel Moroni
Oh,
there
yeah.
in Ivory Coast, so maybe we'll have to wait a little bit longer.
Okay. Well, we
But
can wait. We can wait.
that will be the last.
And any idea when that's supposed to happen?
Probably later on in the year.
Late 24. Okay.
It's a candidate for being number 200. So
Oh, see, now there you go. It's pewter, so it's a different color. It's 200. It's the last one. Yes. Okay. There it is. There you go. That's what they're holding out on. Guys, no more. We're celebrating 200. We salute you, Moroni, but we don't praise you because that's not the way that we do that. But we salute you and thank you for your service, Moroni. Okay. I'm hoping that that's the case and that everyone listening to this can go, they called it. They called it. What else then? Temple sites released?
Yeah, the temple site for the Cuernavaca, Mexico temple was announced. It's about a 5-acre site. They're in the center of Cuernavaca in the Colonia Vista Hermosa. Last year I visited Cuernavaca briefly. We just stopped in the city center to look at the cathedral. It's one of the oldest cathedrals in Mexico. So it's not too far away from where the temple site is. It's located in a pretty, ritzy neighborhood with some big houses, and it's located right across the street from a Walmart.
There you
There's
go.
also a Kia dealership, a Cinemex movie theater, and then there's also a Sears department store. If you didn't know those still exist, there are actually more Sears in Mexico than there are in the United States.
So you drop your kids at essentially the mall, the Walmart, the movie theater, get them to go buy a car, and then you go do a session. I love this.
You get a session. The temple site looks like a large mansion from the aerial. It has like a pool and everything. And then it's surrounded by this huge wall, so you can't see inside at all. And then there's this weird cage-like structure.
Okay.
Kind of, it looks like this large like cement building that I don't know, has like some weird I don't know how to describe it, some weird architecture. But it looks like a cage basically. And when I went back and visited one of my areas on my mission, and there was kind of a building like this that was just like recently built in the area, and I asked someone about it, and they're like, that's where the narcos are. That was a narco house, so I don't know if this is also a drug-related
That's
cartel
awesome. We bought a
house.
drug compound to put a temple.
That's
We're,
not confirmed,
we're
but
even getting
what it
the
looks
land
like.
to repent. Yeah, no, this looks unreal. It's sort of reminiscent. This is mildly reminiscent of like the wall that used to exist around Temple Square in downtown Salt Lake, a very thick, kind of tall wall that you can't see over, but it looks to be, made of like cobblestone and taller than the
Oh yeah.
Temple Square wall. That's
So
wild.
I'm curious to see if they tear down this wall and put a nice fence so that you can see through the temple, or if you just keep the wall there. It looks historic, maybe. I don't know.
I hope that they get the president of Mexico to come and say, President Nelson, tear down that wall. And then everyone gets up and starts chipping away at it, and we have an all night party. Yes, everyone. That's a dated reference, but thank you, everyone, for following me along with that. Okay. So, Mexico, they get another temple. That's awesome. La Paz, or as I like to say, the Paz.
That's right, the piece.
Oh, is that what that
Well,
means?
it does. It is what that means. Um, La Paz Bolivia Temple, they had already announced where the site was going to be a few months ago, but they released the rendering to show what it will look like. It's going to kind of be like a large rectangular temple, kind of like a granite color with some gold accents. They have a nice gold cupola on the top. It's a very Spanish colonial design, very ornate. Um, just everything on the temple looks very, there's a lot of symbols and everything, and ornate motifs and all that. It looks a lot like the Grand Rapids, Michigan temple,
Hmm,
except the Grand Rapids temple is a lot more clean lines and everything modern. This one is very Spanish colonial.
very cool. Now, we talked about this before, but in Manhattan, there's obviously some work on the temple there. And then I can't remember if it was in our last time that we chatted and we speculated about this, or if it was in an articles of news where we said, yeah, the church is renting some land. Talk to me about what's going on in New York as far as the temple and where wards will meet.
Yeah, originally in local news, the Villager in New York broke this. They said that the Church of Christ is leasing a old historic church. It's like one of these Dutch churches that come from, I think, the 1600s, they said. And they said that on Sundays, Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints will use it, use the gym and I think they call the chapel the sanctuary. And they'll have some offices there. And then like Friday, Saturday, the other church will use it. And then later, the Desert News did write a story about this, and they confirmed with the stake president that it was for the purpose of housing the at least two congregations that currently meet in the chapel that's in the Manhattan York Temple structure. I don't know. There's actually another YSA ward that meets in the temple, and they only said those two will go to this church, so who knows where that other ward will go.
I know
But yeah,
there's
they can.
another ward. When I was in Manhattan one time and I went to a ward, it was not in the temple. It was in a different building. And
Uh-huh.
the American Sign Language ward was the ward I attended, and quickly
Oh,
found out
nice.
that I was not going to be able to understand any of the meeting. But I mean, I would imagine they could probably do a second meeting there, or who knows? That was a decade or so ago. There's probably been another piece of land appropriated or leased or rented for people to meet.
Yeah, actually, yeah, the churches in Manhattan are actually like pretty full, I would say. They're not like these buildings that only have one ward. They actually have several wards in them.
Hmm.
So it's probably a little bit harder to find a place to shuffle these wards to. So the church looked for a place in the vicinity of the temple that they could use, and evidently they found what they needed. I did listen to, I don't think it's come out yet, but I listened to a sneak peek of an interview that someone did with this pastor, and he talked about his experience about talking to the church facilities people and everything. Um,
Well,
I
wait,
don't know.
tell me how you got to hear something that hasn't even been released yet. Come on.
I'd have to promote another podcast if I did that.
I'll allow it. What is it?
Okay, it was John DeLynne's news podcast, and
Okay.
one of the I think the Mormonish news podcaster lady, she talked to the pastor and just about how I think she's going to release the interview later. But she just said that, yeah, I think he even went to church headquarters to talk to them, and he was very impressed and everything.
Hmm.
The church that's there, the West End Collegiate Church, it's a very, I would say, politically progressive church.
Hmm.
All along the church, they have Black Lives Matter signs, they have pride flags, they have signs about protecting abortion. So it will be very interesting to see if once the church moves into that building, if there's some sort of agreement to not have those messages, or if they're just like, fine, we'll
Interesting.
have them. It's your property, we're just leasing it from you. I'm sure there'll be some people, especially the people that were upset about the new church spokesman, maybe also being upset about this. I don't know. We'll have to see
But
how this goes.
yeah, maybe it's just in sort of my mind and maybe doesn't bear out, but I would think that members of the church in Manhattan would be more progressive and maybe more liberal than somewhere else, or
Oh,
that
I would agree. Yeah.
they're surrounded by things like that anyway that they maybe don't even think about it, right? Like, I'm going into this building. Okay.
Yeah,
You
I
know.
think that's very likely.
Yeah. Yeah. What I think is going to be fascinating is if you look at the pictures and if you click on the links in the show notes to be able to see this, it's such a gorgeous sanctuary that I think the idea of then having to go back to, and we never claim to have the most ornate or like fanciful, chapels. To go from this particular church to go back to our church, it'll kind of be like, oh, okay.
I agree, but they are having a renovation that's, multi-millions of dollars. Maybe they'll make that chapel in the Manhattan Temple a lot more interesting.
Yeah, we both know they won't, but maybe they will. Maybe they will. That would be an interesting thing if they did. All right, let's see. The Phnom Penh. Do 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 do.
It's actually pronounced Phnom Penh.
Nope,
The P's are
Phnom.
silent. Or
If
yeah,
you're gonna do the song, you have to do Phnom. Phnom
Phnom.
Penh. Do
Okay.
do 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 do.
Yeah, Elder Renlund was recently in Cambodia. He met with the prime minister. He went and visited the killing fields, and then he went to the temple. And he talked about the contrast of, you know, being at a somber place like the killing fields, but then going to the temple and having a lot more hope about the future. Yeah, so the construction is progressing. They're starting to put up the exterior stone on the temple, and yeah, probably another year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, so we'll be ready for dedication.
Coming up in the news, we'll talk a little bit about another structure that the church built there in Phnom Penh, which I think is significant, especially for critics of the church saying, why doesn't the church ever, with their money, this? So know that we'll get to that in articles of news coming up. And if you haven't seen that, that's a little teaser for you, Corey K. Ward, to listen to this.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that yet.
Yeah. The Salt Lake Temple, I think your show notes are incorrect. You have that the Main Street Plaza
Oh
will
no.
close from 6:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m., which would mean we could only be on the Main Street Plaza overnight. I think it's converse there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's a minor controversy, especially if you live in Salt Lake or the downtown. You know that when the church negotiated the purchasing of Main Street in front of Salt Lake Temple, there was I don't know, do you think it was a soft agreement that the church would just keep it open so that people could continue to walk that area in between
Yeah, I
locations?
mean, I feel like it was a soft agreement, but I also feel like both the city and residents of the city knew that the church had appropriated the land, right? And you'd seen various things go on. We talked about this, I think, in maybe last week's articles of news, where, if you remember, 15 years ago, there was a gay couple that was there sort of in the evening time kissing by the fountain or something like that. And church security sort of ran them off. And then it was a big deal and, all sorts of publicity and stuff like that. You sort of always knew that though it was open and once upon a time it was part of the main street and all that stuff, you sort of knew that the church ran it. It's odd to me, I think, to close it, but I understand why they would want to, and they own it. Whether or not you like that they own it, and I don't keep my doors unlocked and open all night, and that's
Well,
my property and my choice.
I know that there was 2 gates around the other parts of Temple, so you could basically wall off Main Street from the rest of Temple Square in the
Mhm.
past. So maybe something changed, and maybe that's not the design anymore. So
Oh yeah, no,
um,
100% it isn't. There is not a wall on the east side of Temple Square into Main Street. That wall is gone.
okay, I guess that makes sense then, because then you could access the rest of Temple Square.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure it'd be annoying for people that, I don't know, like to walk their dogs in the morning or have to get to work. They like to walk to work, and they have to, because I walk around Salt Lake all the time, and when I have to walk a whole city block that way, it like takes a huge part of my time to do that. So
Sure, sure. Although I will say this, and maybe it's something that they'll change as the landscape of Salt Lake City has changed. There are parts of downtown Salt Lake that are not that favorable. And like I was just on Main Street, but a little bit south of the temple the other day, and I recognize it to be a national problem, homelessness and all of that. Certainly, I do the very little part that I can to be able to help with stuff like that, but it's bad. It is almost impassable at certain times of the night, safety wise and otherwise, for folks in downtown Salt Lake. And so, I mean, if you don't want people coming and setting a tent up in the middle of the night or finding a bench and all that stuff, it seems sort of counter to maybe some Christian principles, but also like safety, some of the other concerns that people would have. I mean, I get why they would lock it up.
okay.
Yeah, I guess that's how I feel. That's how I feel in this moment. I'm welcoming contact@theculturalhall.com. All of those comments that say, "How dare you?" Let's get to some lawsuits. Yes, we can't just build temples. Come on, lawsuits.
Yeah, there's just some brief updates about the Cody, Wyoming Temple. The judge is hearing an argument whether to stay the construction, because I think right now the church is in its right to start construction of the temple. So the plaintiffs in the lawsuit are just asking to basically say, hey, until we like sort this all out, don't allow them to construct anything. So we'll see what the judge decides on there.
Yeah, to me, I feel like you don't until it gets all sorted out, right?
Because then you have more problems. Yeah.
Yeah, because then it's like, well, look, we already started, but you got to let us finish. I don't know. That's Cody, but I was surprised to see in the news that the Heber Temple is back in the news.
Yeah. Well, basically, there was already a lawsuit against the county, but now the church is basically joining that lawsuit because the decision of that lawsuit will affect their property, and so they're just doing it to basically say, hey, we also have a stake in this, so we want to be able to make our own arguments as well. So yeah, they're joining the county in the defense of that lawsuit.
And there's a referendum. They have to have a certain amount of signatures to get something on the ballot. And as we record it, that's today. The deadline is by midnight tonight. So we'll find out if that'll actually be a balloted thing for the community of Heber to see if that building will continue or if it will continue to be, hold on, somewhere else. Otherwise, place it somewhere else. You know where they should put it, now that I think about it? What is was it a tribute to the Book of Mormon prophets that's going up in Heber, that museum? Is that what it is?
Oh yeah, I heard
about that. It's we haven't done the story about it like I would have liked, but there's like it's a fairly conservative organization that's like, we're building large statues to our heroes somewhere in the Heber Valley. I say you put the temple right next to that. Just you walk through the gardens of the Book of Mormon heroes, and then you go right to the temple.
Actually,
Okay,
if they donate the property, it'd be free property. Maybe.
See. And then we got some open houses.
Yeah, they're coming up. Red Cliffs, Utah. I think next Monday they'll have the media and everything. And yeah, they'll be I think February 1st through the beginning of March. And then Manta Utah is coming up as well. That'll be March 14th to April 5th. And so probably a lot of people are having spring break around that time. And it's only gonna be 3 weeks. And so I did hear that there's probably a lot of demand. And so although I've probably been to, 5 or 6 open houses in the last 10 years, and I've never been asked for a reservation. And so it's always just, you're here, yay,
Yep. Welcome,
get in
come on
line.
in.
But I've heard that maybe it's a good idea to get a reservation just in case it's super busy, especially on the
sure.
weekend.
Well, I mean, Manti, the community itself of just Manti, like, I mean, that's the place where the Manti pageant obviously was for forever. And that community, like anything with that temple, that is their town. We will go multiple times. We will host people. That is their Olympics, I guess. That is the time for their city to shine. So you can imagine both they will attend as well as make sure that that's a great experience. We are making a push. So this is a warning for you, Corey K. Ward, to do the media day for the Manti Temple and to bring an artist or someone who knows a considerable amount of LDS art, specifically Minerva Teichert, to do a small cultural hall tour on media day adjacent to the tour that the church offers, so that we can see what murals and things have been left and know all about that. So that is in the very early stages of having that come together. And if we are able to ask other guests to come, we'll make that available. Otherwise, we'll just tell you all about it.
Nice. That sounds cool.
Yeah. Okay. So that's some good temple news. Is there anything coming down the pipe, or you're waiting for something that you're like, oh man, this should have been any day. I can't wait for this.
No, I just know that there's some more groundbreakings this weekend, and then some more open houses soon. So
yep. Rinse and repeat as we get to 500 by 2030. Here we go, baby. Point to the outfield. 500 by 2030. Corey K. Ward, if you want to learn more about him, you can actually now go to the About Us tab at theculturalhall.com, and you can see his pretty face if you're just an audio listener. And you should also be able to get a link to the Facebook group page thing that he does about the LDS chapels around the world. You want to get an instant link to that? You bet. Click on it and see chapels like maybe that West End Collegiate Church, and how awesome that is. Is that going to be featured sometime?
I'll have to do it.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. I appreciate your time. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got Megan the Mitch doing actual articles of news. And here we are in the second half of what we are calling the Temple Ticker news articles, whatever, because we just finished the Temple Ticker with Corey K. Ward. Megan the Mitch, welcome to Articles of News as we wrap out the latest-ish news from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thanks for being here.
Anytime. How are you?
I am well. A massive shout out to Mr. Mayor allowing us to be able to see Megan the Mitch Mitchell in 4K resolution as she broadcasts her part of the news from a child's tent in the backyard. That's what the sheet over your head looks like.
It's true.
You're following on YouTube. It looks like she's in a tent that her kids collapsed on her, and she just was like, listen, I'm going to keep doing the thing, and then they'll be grounded later. Anything new or exciting with you?
Let's see. Ooh, can I brag about a kid?
Which kid? The older or younger kids?
Middle.
Okay, because I have my faves of yours, so there I will not allow bragging on some of them. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, that's fair. So my son Ethan, he's about to turn 13.
There you go.
And he plays baseball. And he's done just rec leagues, his whole life. And he's been begging us to play for a competition, like travel team. And he's tried out a few times, and it's been like they have 3 people try out and they only need 2. And he's been number 3, so that's a bummer, but he's made the best of it and like really honed his skills in the rec leagues and stuff. And then this past fall, he kept asking us to try out for a comp team again. And we're like, well, let's look at grades. Let's look at all of these things. And unfortunately, his grades were kind of in the toilet. So we were like, sorry, bud, you got to get your grades up and then you can try out. And we gave him the threshold that he needed to meet. And that dude pulled it out and got his grades where he needed him to be. And he said, "Can I try out for a comp team?" And we said, "Buddy, you do the research, find some teams that have tryouts coming up, and then we'll go from there." Not only did he find teams for tryouts, he called the coaches, he set up the tryouts for himself,
Wow.
and like went through the whole process, and he made one of the teams.
There you go.
I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of him because it's, he's worked for it. He's worked really hard.
Yeah.
And he's still, the coaches said, "We only want 11 on our team, but we're going to take you as number 12 because we think you have a lot of potential. We think you'll work hard. You took the initiative." And so it means he might be playing on the bench a little bit this season, but he's still doing all the same workouts with the team, all of the things, traveling to all of the tournaments, which
Sure.
is going to be a lot. It's like four tournaments in either St. George or Idaho,
Mhm.
and then one like big tournament in either Colorado or Nebraska. So in like between now and July, we'll have like 5 different tournaments that he needs to be at. But one of them aligns with a dance competition.
Very
So
good.
we'll be in St. George already. So
Oh.
we'll just like take 2 cars.
I was hoping that he would be a part of the dance competition. That's a
Right.
different child. Is what you're
Different
saying.
child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
anyways, I'm really proud of him because
Yeah.
he had to do a lot of work to get his grades up where they needed to be. And then just to see him take the initiative, even the coach said to my husband at the tryout, he's like, "I was hoping that you guys actually knew what was going on, that he wasn't just like arranging this for himself and you guys had no idea."
Yeah.
So anyway, he's really excited. I'm really excited for him. So
That's incredible. That is,
Yeah.
I think that is parenting in its finest. Where
thank
you sort of go, because I think that there's a lot of parents that could be like, "And I'll help you if you get this," and I don't know that that's a wrong way of doing it,
Sure.
but you certainly know that it means a lot more to the kid if the kid has to do all of the work.
Right.
That at least that the kid has the amount of resilience to go, "Yeah," and then I kept trying,
Right.
and then I kept trying.
Yep.
Also that you've disqualified yourself out of the millions of dollars that he'll likely make in the major leagues because he'll say things like, "You never helped me. You made me make my own phone calls." But I mean, that's neither
Listen,
here nor there.
it's fine. He has promised me if he gets like a Bryce Harper style contract into the major leagues, he'll buy me a house or something.
That's
So,
awesome. Will your husband be able to live there, or is he like,
Not
"Mom, you're
sure.
my favorite. I'm
Jury's
buying
out on
you a
that one.
house." Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Well, a quick thing for me. I had it happen the other day. If people follow me personally on Facebook, they'll know what I'm already talking about. But I am astounded. I have been a runner for the majority of my life. In fact, even as a young kid, I remember being in 3rd or 4th grade in elementary school. At recesses, one year I'd started to see how many times I could run around the portable during
Okay.
a recess time, and it got to the point that people would start to like count how many times I could do it and see if I could break the record or whatever. And as I did it, other kids would want to do it and join me too, and other kids got sick and had to go home from school and different things, and so not a great experience. Anyway, needless to say, ran my entire life and have always enjoyed watching my dad run. He's run like 75 marathons
Oh my
in his
gosh.
life. He can't run anymore due to running 75 marathons in his life.
Reasonable.
But it had never happened to me before ever until the other day. I ran on the treadmill and I was able to achieve bloody nipple status on my runner bib, that shirt thing that I was what are those things called? It's not a unitard. It's like a
tank top?
No, but they call it something for runners.
Oh,
Whatever
do
that
they call
is.
it a kit? No, that's
No,
soccer.
that's yeah. It's a it's
Yeah.
a fidgeting.
Obviously.
Anyway, running, didn't know that my nipples were bleeding. So I'm the crazy guy on the treadmill at the gym, sweating, and I
dripping
grunt.
blood.
I'm a grunter a little bit, especially towards the end. My wife got me one of those things that you put on your arm that is more accurate for your heart
step
rate and
count
stuff,
or
so
whatever.
you can work in zones. So you
Sure.
can work
Okay.
out in zones and burn. Blah, blah, I don't know, whatever. She's still teaching me. I'm that crazy guy grunting with just bloody nipple drips on my shirt. So there it is.
Okay. So Is this a congratulations moment, or is this a I'm really sorry to hear that moment? Because I'm not a runner, so I don't know.
I feel like I've arrived because every runner has that happen to them.
Okay, just took you longer.
Just took me longer, but I've run marathons before. Now,
Okay, I didn't know that. That's impressive, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I used to use it as an excuse to travel. I was like, I want to go to place. Okay, I'll run a marathon there because I couldn't just justify it. And
Sure.
I did a couple with like the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society where you raise money and then you go do the race, and it was a super
Okay.
cool experience.
Very cool.
Spendy, but super cool. But yeah, no, I finally arrived. Now, when I've done the marathons, though, you get the nipple band-aids. And
Sure.
you precautionary. You're doing that action for so long, you know it's bound to happen, so you just do it. But I just thought treadmill run, I'm safe. I'm clear. I'm in the clear. Nope.
Yeah.
I was not.
How far did you run that day?
I'm almost like a half marathon, probably pretty close to.
I'm lucky if I get 5 minutes on the treadmill without like keeling over dead.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a runner at all.
Well, here is the thing that I would tell you.
Tell me.
2024, let me recast a vision for you.
Okay.
Say something like, I am a person who runs, but not for very long.
I like that.
Instead of,
Yeah.
I am not a runner.
I'm a person who runs, but not for very long.
Yeah. Because when you say, I'm not a runner, guess what? You give yourself the excuse
to not run.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. Well, I'm really good at running 5 minutes on the treadmill.
Yeah.
I crush it.
And you want to know something crazy? And what I literally have done, then we're actually going to get to news, I promise. Like if you did 5 minutes this week, and then next week you're like, listen, I'm not going 10 minutes. That's insane.
Right.
I'm going to go 6 minutes.
Slay.
And then next week you do 6 minutes. And then the next week, maybe you just say, oh, listen, I don't need to go up this week. But then the next week you go 7. In 2 months' time, you could be a 10-minute runner without hardly any effort.
Hey, will I cry in this process? Because sometimes I cry.
Sure,
no, I don't.
Sure.
I don't really cry.
Sure. My first marathon, I bawled like a baby.
Seriously?
A baby. It was none of my brothers and sisters. Sorry, everyone. We're getting to news at some point, I promise.
It is what it is.
It was the Las Vegas Marathon in 2007. I had never run a marathon before. And my dad said, hey, I'll run this with you. Let's go down and do it. I said, that sounds great. So we went down, and none of my siblings had ever run a marathon before. Actually, still have not. And I'm there in the starting gates. You're corralled. Emotions are high anyway. You're wondering, did I drink enough? Did I train enough? Have I eaten properly for the day? Am I going to be able to do this? Whatever. And my dad took the moment and said, you know what, son, I always dreamed of the day that one of my kids would join me in a marathon, and I can't wait for this today. And I'm just like,
oh,
just
a mess.
an unwildly amount of tears, just gushy. And the best part about that marathon is my dad's marathon time was about an hour faster than mine.
Dang.
So he would run with me.
Oh my gosh.
And then he'd be like, I'm going to go get a drink. And so then like he'd get to the next aid station, and then he'd be like, I don't usually drink this much. I'm going to go use the restroom. So then he'd go use the restroom, and he'd catch back up to me. And I'm just like, okay, that's cool. Yeah. Go ahead and run circles around. That's
impressive.
That's fine. All right, let's get to actual articles of news. Hit it, Peter. And away we go. I thought this was fascinating, and I want to start here. Elder Kieran, that is the newest apostle of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, recently essentially had a press day, an opportunity where he visited with various members of the press, Associated Press, Salt Lake Tribune, Deseret News, KSL, Channel 4 in Salt Lake. I think that everyone was probably part of a larger press conference, and then maybe got to ask him a few questions. Now, what I think is fascinating about this is that the Associated Press headline talks about this, says, new member of LDS church leadership says it must do better to help sex abuse victims heal. And we'll get into that in a minute, right? But that was literally every headline that I saw about Elder Kieran talking to the press. Some variation of that. we need to help these people. We need to offer more services, right? That was the headline, except for the Deseret News. And the Deseret News headline says, Elder Patrick Kieran describes feelings as the first adult convert called as a Latter-day Saint apostle in 119 years, which is of note.
Very. Yep.
But I just find it fascinating in a couple ways, and maybe not the way that you think. Certainly, sex abuse is going to be the thing that that leads in a headline type of thing. So
especially with the Associated Press,
sure,
which is fine.
But it was
And
literally all of the presses.
Sure.
East Idaho News had some variation of it.
Okay.
ABC,
The Tribune, I'm sure. Yeah.
It was literally like, hey, this person admitted to this and said they need to do this.
Sure.
So I understand that is a more captivating, more capturing headline, perhaps. But the Deseret News didn't even mention it at all in the article.
Oh,
didn't mention that statements around that at all. And I know that people throw a lot of shade on the Salt Lake Tribune for, oh, that paper that hates the LDS Church. Okay, have your feelings, that's fine.
Right.
But I feel like if you want to have a similar opinion about the Deseret News, where they're like, anything that could borderline be potentially maybe a little bit, truthful or shady about the church, they won't report it. That to me is just as bad.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it is a view that was discussed by the apostle, by the LDS Church's apostle, whom owns the Deseret News.
Right.
And if you don't mention it, what a skewed vision of that opportunity, that individual, that discussion, that press conference that you just didn't even report on. Now, maybe the excuse could be made where they say, well, listen, everybody else will report on it. That doesn't hold water with me. You at least have to mention it to say, hey,
right.
And he also said this.
Is it possible that they could be doing further reporting on that? And maybe that's why they didn't mention it? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
That is a benefit of the doubt that down the road, it could be Elder Kieran said this.
And this is what we're doing about it.
But I still feel like when you're reporting on we're meeting this, and all of these people hear these other things, that you still include it. You don't have to make it the headline. That's not Deseret News's MO to put that in their headline. I get that.
Right.
But I still think that you say, and he also discussed about how we need to do more to help sex abuse victims heal. And that should have been a part of it.
One thing in looking at the AP article is that, so I like this quote. He said, there is no question in my mind that the abuse of a child or the deliberate abuse of anyone is the most heinous crime and must not be tolerated in any form. Right. Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
We must all be much better, regardless of which religious group or denomination, in caring for those who have been victims of those crimes. And move beyond just surviving the ordeal. So I like that he said, like, yes, we need to do better, but also so does everybody. And I think that's not related, obviously, to what you're saying about the Deseret News, but I do like what he said, that he said, like, it's not just us, it's everybody.
Sure.
Everybody needs to do better with this.
Yeah. He was further asked about the LDS hotline, which, if people don't know, if a bishop encounters in some way that someone has been abused, there's a hotline that they can call and say, hey, help me out with some legal advice as far as this goes. Or at least that's what's it's intended for that particular thing to be. He didn't speak specifically about the hotline, but then said further, we must deploy everything we can to help those who have been mistreated in the most dreadful ways heal. There's been a lot of progress made in this regard, but we need to get much better. And of course, you look no further than some of the other articles of news that we will talk about in this very articles of news, where there have been continuous things that have occurred within literal walls of our church, or beyond, just between church members, and we're not unique to it. I don't think anyone is saying that, but it is encouraging to hear one of the apostles really even talk about it.
And to be very forthright about it.
Yeah. First convert in 119 years is also pretty cool.
I
To be
know.
called as an apostle.
I think that's really, really cool. The interesting thing about that is he went on like a 2-year discovery of the church. Like he investigated for a long, like what we would consider a long time. You know, and he was initially like, nah, it's not for me.
Mhm.
Not really my thing. But then he realized that the doctrines of the church and the people, like, they aligned. You know, it wasn't just lip service. It was people actually living their faith.
Mhm.
That really got him to the point where he was like, yeah, this is something I could do. And I think that's awesome.
What I
So.
also think is kind of cool about this is the story about how Elder Kieran was called.
Mhm.
So he's in a meeting because he's in the presidency of the 70. I think he was the president, acting president, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Visiting. And he gets out of the meeting and gets passed a note, which in my mind is like, you know, two girls passing it in middle
Right.
school. That's like how I want that note.
Do you
to
like
be heard.
this guy? Circle yes or no.
And the note says, "Can you meet President Nelson in 10 minutes?" And it was
Sure.
Elder Kieran was the senior president of the presidency of the 70. He said, I mean, yeah, okay. When the prophet asks to meet you, of course you do. He says, after a short wait, President Nelson, the church prophet and president, greeted him. We talked. He asked me some questions. He was beautiful, as is his nature and way. And then he extended the call. He was to take the seat in the Quorum of the 12 that had been vacated by President M. Russell Ballard. And here's the deal. His wife wasn't there.
Okay, seriously. Yes, I saw that. My husband was just called as a ward missionary, and I had to be there for that.
Yeah.
He just got released as Elders Quorum president and got called as a ward missionary, and they needed me there to say that I would support him.
Yeah.
As a ward missionary, arranging service projects. So
Now,
I'm like, his wife, maybe they patched her in. Maybe they got her on a Zoom.
yeah. So there's lots of things that I think about this. Is one, that I think it probably speaks to the amazing character of, and if you look it up, I want to say her by her name, what Sister Kieran's name is.
I will find it.
But that they just know Sister Kieran's, you know, demeanor and devotion to God, that they're like, yeah, she's in. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Her name's Jennifer.
Jennifer. That Jennifer's, you know, her faith is just like, of course, of follow
Yeah.
Patrick in whatever he wants to do, and as a person of faith enough that she could handle the very difficult responsibilities of being an apostle's
apostle.
wife, right?
Right.
So I think that is certainly interesting. That he didn't say like, oh, hey, let me just call her, or maybe he did, but certainly the story doesn't say, let me just loop her in real quick.
Right. Shoot a text really fast. Hang on.
Yeah. Hold on.
Can I FaceTime her really fast?
Want to FaceTime with the prophet? Okay.
Sure.
But then he said, yeah, let's do it. Here we go. And then he says, I was ordained and set apart all in that moment. So if I understand correctly, and tell me if you understood this differently, that his wife wasn't there when he was ordained either.
That's how I read it. Yeah. So here's one thing to think about. So the next day he was scheduled to speak at BYU Hawaii at their commencement.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that maybe she had gone ahead of him and they had traveled there separately? So maybe she was already in Hawaii.
Sure.
And so then she wouldn't be able to be there, like, present, you know, in person. But at the same time, like, to be ordained and set apart without her, like, they could have probably waited like 4 days.
Well, no,
but,
so that's another part of it that I think is just sort of exciting, that he's like, no, needs to be now, needs to be you, for whatever reason, whether it's convenience, which I sort of tip my hat a little bit. Sometimes there's so much pageantry within the church where it's like, in 3 weeks' time, we'd love to meet with you. We're not going to tell you what it is. And then in 4 weeks' time, we're going to actually set you apart. It's like, no, ask me the thing today. I'll do the thing
done
tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, then to be like, oh, hey, so notice anything different about me? Is it your haircut? Is it your haircut? No.
Do you see the light?
Yeah.
Can you feel the mantle?
Yeah. So then he continues to talk about how he just feels incredibly overwhelmed, that he had the opportunity to be with Elder Christofferson at the Orem Temple dedication, and that, you know, fully fully just welcomed right in and immediately put to work, which I also think speaks to the fact that you have some of these apostles that are, I don't want to say so old, but are old.
They're tired.
Yeah, old. Yeah, and unable to do as much as a 62-year-old apostle. It's like, man, get in, let's go. We got enough octogenarians and septuagenarians that can't do some of these things. We need your young blood. Let's go.
Right.
And get after it. So
I love how he said, I'm grateful that I slept last night, which is amazing. I slept well, but a lot of sleeplessness and soul searching and all of those inner feelings that I think most of us have in relation to anything we're asked to do. I still don't really have words to encapsulate it, but I have to deal with my response to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So very cool.
He's awesome.
I'm excited to hear from him again at next general conference. He was a great speaker anyway, one that I really liked. Not only his accent, although let's be honest, that's a good part of it.
Slays. It's a good one.
But so great in the messages that he has shared. I'm excited to hear that and see if there feels a difference.
Right.
That he's an apostle.
Okay, so this is the cutest thing. President Jeffrey R. Holland assigned Elder Christofferson to mentor Elder Kieran in his new role in the Quorum of the 12. And I think that's cute how they have mentors to help them
you have
transition. Oh, totally. I never thought about it, and so then to see that, I'm like, oh, that makes practical, logical sense. But then I think it's sweet how it probably helps build the camaraderie to be like, like when you're at girls' camp and you have you're like a youth leader. What?
Your fourth years and they're
exactly your fourth years and you're a counselor to the first years who they don't know what's going on. And you're like, it's all right. I got this. I got you. We're going to get through this together. I just think that that's really, really a sweet way to build camaraderie. And then Elder Kieran said, so pray for him. He's the ideal mentor in my mind. He's gentle, kind, thoughtful, anticipates. He gives me sort of practical guidance in terms of this is roughly how that goes, or these are the things that you have to keep in mind as you approach this moment. And here are some things that I have learned. That's kind of his approach. It's very, very gentle, thoughtful, and kind in keeping with the man. But I love how he's like, pray for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And in my heart of hearts, I hope that Elder Christofferson calls Elder Kieran Jr. Come on, Junior.
Keep up.
This is how we do this. Megan the Mitch Mitchell, she is all things sports.
Yeah, she is.
She's got a bunch of sports stories. So let me see if I can. Megan the Mitch Mitchell track.
So let's do this. Saints Who Sport with Megan the Mitch. So the first one, and Richie, this is off script. I didn't tell you I was going to do this one.
What?
I know. What else is new? So the current front runner for Rookie of the Year in the NBA, Victor Wembanyama, he goes by Wemby. He's French. He is so tall. This is more adjacent because he's not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. However, his favorite author is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay. His favorite author is Brandon Sanderson. And he talked about how he's read every single one of his books multiple times and he loves escaping into the worlds that he's built. And it's funny because Brandon Sanderson is currently writing a new series that happens to have these characters that are very tall and long. I think he calls them element dancers or something. And he's like, Wemby, Victor could totally be one of these guys. That's exactly what I imagine. So anyway, that's just a cute little story about Saints Who Sport adjacent.
I reject that Saints Who Sports story. Get me to another one.
All right, fine. 5 BYU women's soccer players were selected in the National Women's Soccer League draft, and Latter-day Saint Olivia Moultrie also received an award. So BYU was the second most selected team in the draft this year. Number 1 was North Carolina. So we had, sorry, I'm finding the list. Brecken Mozingo, she went number 4 overall to the Utah Royals. Woohoo! Olivia Smith-Griffiths picked number 20. She also went to the Royals. Olivia Wade Katoa picked number 3, and she goes to the Portland Thorns. Jamie Shepard, number 30 in the draft, went to Bay Football Club,
That's owned
and
by
then
Beyonce.
obviously, they're
So dumb.
in a
Sorry,
stunning turn of
everyone.
events. Their mascot is a bee. Who knew?
Yeah.
I would have thought that for Utah. And
It's-
then
No, it's
the
Queen Bee because of Beyonce. Forget it.
right, exactly. And then in the fourth round, Laveni Vaca, she went number 55 also to Bay FC. And then Olivia Moultrie, who plays for, I believe she plays for the Thorns. She received the, sorry, I want to get it right. The Young Female Player of the Year.
Wow.
So that's really exciting. She's the youngest woman to ever be selected to play in the National Women's Soccer League. And so yeah, she's awesome. Member of the church. She's really amazing at keeping her standards really high and just doing the thing and crushing
Awesome.
it.
And
I think
BYU
she
women's
was
soccer, if people don't know, if that doesn't give you every indication, phenomenal.
so good.
Championship contenders every year.
Every single year. So that's our first Saints Who Sport. And then this was an interesting story. So former coach of Navy, Ken Neomatalo,
Yep.
Talalo,
Featured in the Meet the Mormons movie
exactly.
that we aren't allowed to talk about anymore.
Nope, never. So he was just named the head coach of San Jose State University. Now, the interesting thing about this is that a month prior, he had been named the tight ends coach at UCLA.
Interesting.
After previously serving as the the director of leadership at UCLA for the 2023 season. Then he was named the tight ends coach, and then a month later he was picked up by San Jose State University. So that's exciting for him. He is the winningest coach in Navy history. He coached there for several years and had an incredible record. He coached there from 2007 to 2022. His record was 109 wins and 83 losses. So he's got the credentials to back it all up. So exciting for him.
Now, I've got that the San Jose football coaches Sam. Oh wait, never mind. Here's an interesting thing about that. Hold on, I'm looking up what the salary is, Navy football coach salary, because I can tell you probably why he went.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah. Okay, so here's the difference. Oh no, maybe not actually. Back in the day, it was only $62,000 for a football coach at Navy. But most recently, in 2022, the pay that Ken Niamotololo made is the same that he's making at San Jose. So maybe he just wanted a West Coast stint.
So I think he was let go from his position at Navy. Like he didn't just like leave. Like I think they were like, we're done. It's time to separate. I don't know that for sure, but I think that was the case. So, but then like he was hired at UCLA to work in like with the team,
As a tight end coach. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a month later, San Jose State was like, no, we'll take you instead. So.
Well,
anyway.
so this is interesting as we look at and I'm not saying he's a money-driven person, but that the average like assistant coach, which is what a tight end coach is, like $350,000 a year. So it's a couple $1 million more.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah,
I can go do that. You know what? I'll go because even with the 10% reduction that Ken faces,
exactly,
he's making more money. Do you have more Saints Who Sport?
That's the last one.
Okay, let me go through just a couple quick. These are like I don't know, just quick one-offs. There is, if you are interested, and we'll do an upcoming episode, probably a shorter interview episode about the Thumb Follow Me YouTube video series. If you haven't seen this, they are thumbprints, thumbs that go through the various stories that kids would learn about in Come Follow Me. It's called Thumb Follow Me, and I just thought that was kind of clever. It's a thing out of Storybox Studios that Brigham and Noah, those are their first names. Their last name, Sunday. So it's Brigham and Noah Sunday that they put together and do, trying to speak at a kid's level about the Come Follow Me. We'll talk to them in the future, so I won't go too much further into that.
I
thought
want to
that-
use one of their videos in my grown-up gospel doctrine class.
You did?
I want to.
Oh, you want to? No, you should. 100% you should.
Right?
This was interesting. Why was Lisa Barlow's son, if you don't know, she's one of the housewives of Salt Lake City. Why was her son's Mormon mission delayed? He was supposed to be serving in Colombia, couldn't get a visa, so had to go to California first before he could go to Colombia. Part of the delay, we always hear about the delays for visas for missionaries. Part of the delay, just a visa delay. The other part, do you know? Did you read the story?
I did not. I
Mhm.
also think it's one of those things where I'm like, well, it's none of my business. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry that his business is all, whatever. But
Delayed because he sent the visa department a shirtless photo of
Oh, that's
himself
right.
for his visa application.
you did see that.
Tops off. Give me a visa. Let me come to your country to be able to serve my mission. That's Lisa Barlow's son. I think Jackson is his name, or Jack, or something like that. Elder Archuleta, former Elder Archuleta, former Mormon Archuleta, Archie, as some people would call him, has landed a memoir deal with Day Street Books, where he will write all about being an American Idol, coming out of the closet, and about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Day Street Books is said, hey, you know what, we're going to front him as far as this goes and look for it to come out later this year, first part of 2025, it looks like.
Okay.
As he's written this, obviously have some help to write that, as most of those authors do, but should be an interesting look inside the LDS Church and some of his conversations, as he was the poster child for the church, doing large firesides. The church's production arm went to, I think he was in Chile, serving a mission, where they brought, massive amounts of camera light and other sort of production down for these various conferences that they did, being able to capture and capitalize on the popularity that he had from being on American Idol before serving his mission, and now for him to have left the church behind him. That is another of these kind of quick one-off stories. Kristen Stewart, you know who Kristen Stewart is.
I am so familiar with Kristen Stewart.
Tell people who Kristen Stewart is.
She is Bella from Twilight.
Yep.
And also Princess Diana from a very weird movie called Spencer.
She says she thinks Twilight is such a gay movie. Her words, not mine. She talks about the series, and I wanted to read this because I think that it is an interesting look. I think she's, grabbing at something that isn't there, but she goes on to talk about the series and certainly the movies. It says the franchise is based off of author Stephanie Myers, who, if you don't know, is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or at least was when she wrote it. I think that she still is. I haven't heard that she wasn't.
I haven't heard.
The books of the same name. She thinks that the heteronormative films were actually queer-coded all along. Quote, I can only see it now, Kristen said of the series, quote, Queer Sparkle, end quote, adding, I, quote, don't think it necessarily started off that way, but I also think the fact that I was there at all, it was percolating. It's such a gay movie, end quote. Stewart continued to support her theory and says, I mean, Taylor Lautner and Rob Pattinson and me, and it's so hidden and not okay. I mean, a Mormon woman wrote this book. It's all about oppression, about wanting what's going to destroy you. That's a very gothic, gay inclination that I love. She goes on to write or to say a little bit more about it. But I thought that was an interesting thing to talk about, that maybe some of the popularity of that book does have sort of natural man thoughts woven within it, which I would just say is the human story. We all want the things that we probably should not have, those things that we know either to be physically or emotionally or mentally or spiritually destructive to us. There's something desirable for us to go, oh, I want that thing that I can't have. I would love that thing that I can't have. But, those are sort of her comments. The headline, the gay movie part of it, just trying to get you to click. And it worked. It worked.
It worked. You
Kristen
clicked,
Stewart.
man.
I clicked and I read.
It's an interesting hot take, and it's obviously her experiences. Like, I think people are going to look at things like Twilight or any of these other things and just like color their own, like look at it through their own experience and their own lenses. Because I wouldn't look at it that way, as like, oh, well, it's all about oppression, and so it must be about LGBT issues, and all of that. Like, that's not something that I would see. I look at it more like, oh, here's a girl and maybe she can't be with her missionary because he's on his mission. And then here's this other guy who really wants to date her and she's stuck between trying to decide, like that's my experience that I see.
We should remake it.
Oh, yes.
And
Elder
the
Twilight.
missionary is the werewolf.
Exactly. It writes itself, Richie.
Yeah, basically does. And then just last quick one-off story. This is a couple weeks old, but Michigan national championship football team in college. There is a member of the church on that team. Deseret News did an article about it because he's the first counselor in his bishopric.
And he's a giant.
Yeah, he's in a young single adult ward. He's the first counselor and part of the championship team. So congratulations, Andrew Gentry, and the rest of the Michigan Wolverines. What other stories have you that you would like to talk about?
Okay, I have two. One more serious and one kind of funny that leans into serious. Which one would you like to go first?
I would like one more funny that leans into serious.
Okay, so this is a story. Okay, Richie. It has business deals gone wrong, right?
Okay.
It has real estate ventures. It has murder. And arson and a potential haunting.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's all over the place. Okay, so I have to get a shout out to my sister, Molly. She texted me. She's like, you have to talk about this the next time you're on Articles of News. So Molly, here it goes. So there's this house in Utah County that is abandoned, and it's been on the market for a very long time. And it was originally owned by a very well-known plastic surgeon. Okay. And then a prominent businessman in Utah purchased it and started to do a renovation on it. But this house is not like, there's no living space. Okay. Like there's like a swimming pool and a tennis court and like a basketball court and like a big living room and a kitchen. And that's it. No bedrooms, maybe some bathrooms, but it's basically like he bought it to be a party house. Okay. And then his business situation went south. So they had to put it on the market. It's been abandoned. And I found this real estate photographer who was able to get in and like take a tour. And it's like super creepy, right? And so then all of these people were commenting on it. And this one was like, oh my gosh, I took pictures of that house one time and I swear it's haunted because my camera battery was dying 3 times faster than normal. And I developed the images. And then there was like weird things in the pictures and like, yeah, exactly. Just like all these weird things. Well, it turns out the plastic surgeon who originally owned it was accused of kidnapping his girlfriend and like holding her like captive in this house. Then they were found dead in like a murder-suicide, right?
Okay.
Well, then, Richie, plot twist of all plot twists, right after Christmas, this house that has been on the market for years burned to the ground.
So is this the 20,000 square foot home in Orem that went up? It is.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's more of a Utah centric story, but it's bananas. So crazy. And the fire department was like, yeah, this is definitely intentional. As fast as it went up, and like they call it the mullet house online because it's really pretty in the front. And then when you walk around to the back, it's like plywood. So it's this house was all over the map. It was just so crazy. Wow. And I was not expecting the update because my sister was like, go look at this. So I went and looked at it and I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of weird, whatever. And then I see the follow-up. Oh, it like burned to smithereens. Yeah. So yeah, it has everything. That story has everything.
Wow. Wow.
And what I've heard is that the businessman who owned it, who was trying to sell it,
Mhm.
is the son of the founder of Blendtec.
Oh,
And
interesting. Okay.
now, interestingly enough, my husband does business with Blendtec. And my husband was like, oh, yeah, that guy ran that business into the ground. Like
Mm.
he did not know what he was doing because
Yeah.
he took it over from his dad.
Yeah.
So
Well, he
anyway.
put his business in the blender to see if it would blend.
Yes, to see
and
if it would
did.
blend.
And it did.
Did it blend? It did,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
It blended, mixed it up, chopped it.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yep.
That's
Awful.
wild.
Very.
A word to that. Anytime that there is an expensive home that has a difficulty either selling in your neighborhood or that like no one has bought and you know that the people are going under, look for that house to be burned.
Yes.
There are people who do that for people. This is not conspiracy. This is legitimate. Both my brother and my mother have worked in real estate for a long time, and they're like, that building will have a fire in the next year, because then you can get insurance and you can get out of the deal and be able to be like, oh no, somebody
No, what
else's
happened?
problem. I'm out.
It was lightning struck.
Yeah.
and
They're homeless.
terrible.
Yep.
Anyway.
Okay. Well,
All right. So
you
the
don't
more
get to do
serious
your
story.
other one. Are you trying to do your other one right now?
No.
That's right.
Nope.
That's right. I promised that we would talk about this when I was
Yes.
chatting with Corey K. Ward, the Pharaoh himself, talking about Phnom Penh, because that's where Elder Renlund was the other day, as they are securing some of the stuff with the temple there. The leadership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has committed to joining the Cambodian government in improving the kingdom's health sector. They are going to construct a specialized cardiology clinic in the Siem Reap province. So this is significant to me because there are a lot of people. In fact, just yesterday, sat down with someone who is a former member of the church who said, I walk along 4th South in Salt Lake and I see all of the homeless people, and can't the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints build a building to be able to house these people and be able to help all this? And, why don't they do these particular things? Now, in Utah, the church donates millions from the church and members of the church, additional millions to the homelessness that takes place here in the state of Utah, and time, rent and service, and work, nonprofit, and that could be done otherwise, all the things, right? Do all the things. But as far as a building in the state of Utah, we do not own a building that we say, hey, do this. We're going to be able to help you. That is what this building is, by my understanding, in Phnom Penh. It is a cardiology clinic. Now, it's not for homeless people, but it is to be able to improve the health in the kingdom there, and be able to hands-on have a place for that local population. I thought it was significant. Those people that say, why doesn't the church build a thing? They will continue to support the clinic after it is built. So I think it is significant. I think that we see those things. Why they don't happen in the United States, I'm not exactly sure. As far as
we
the
see it
individual buildings.
Yeah. I think we see it in developing countries because a lot of those countries don't have just the governmental infrastructure that could do those things. Like we have it. Does our country do it? But we do have the infrastructure in the United States to make those things happen. Yeah. Whereas I would guess that Cambodia probably doesn't, at least not to the same extent. Same with areas of Africa and South America. They just don't have a robust enough infrastructure to make it happen. I do love that it was Elder Renlund who announced it, because he's a heart doctor.
That makes sense.
And I think that's a neat, probably not coincidence.
Yeah. This was a cool inspirational story. Find the link to all these, by the way, in the show notes. In Central Park in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, the Relief Society there from the Johnstown ward, they made a bunch of like hats, and they got some gloves and some socks, and they put them in Ziploc bags and attached them to like park benches and different things in the Central Park, and said, nope, these weren't accidentally left here. If you need these, please take them. A lot of homeless people find themselves in that park. And so just a cool variation on your kind of clothing drive for the homeless from the folks there in the Johnstown ward in Pennsylvania, helping out those that otherwise do not have. Our ward did a thing where they took over the entire cultural hall, and they sorted coats and adult coats and female coats and male coats. And you just had like all these different things. And if you needed something, you just came in and took it.
That's awesome.
And if you needed to get rid of something, which more people actually did, they had an abundance of stuff that they ended up taking to the homeless shelter. But there were lots of people who came in and they were like, free? Yes. If your kid needs a coat, take the coat.
Well,
Take
and
the hat, put some
oh
gloves
my
on.
gosh, coats are expensive.
Yeah.
In general. And like when you have kids that are growing, that grow out of them every season, you're buying a new one every single year.
Mhm.
And, you know, a less expensive one is still going to be like 40, 50 bucks,
Yeah.
you know?
And you know that
so
kid's
I
going
love-
to forget it somewhere.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
you know that kid's going to ruin it because they're not that careful.
Or they're just not going to wear it because they're a teenager who thinks they're too cool for wearing a coat. And heaven forbid their friends see that they have a coat.
Yep.
And so then they grow out
Well,
of it
you
and
like
it's
to be
barely
warm?
used. Right. It never happens in my house.
No.
Ever.
Doesn't seem like you have any sort of feelings towards that.
None. The rule in our house is that if there's snow on the ground or moisture coming from the sky, you have to wear a coat. And so like we were pulling out of the driveway the other day and I turned to my kid. I'm like, where's your coat? And he's like, there's no snow on the ground. And I'm like, it's still like 20 degrees. And he's like, well, there's no snow on the ground and no moisture coming from the sky. And I was like, look under that tree. There's a tiny little pile of snow. Go get your
Go
coat
get
on.
your coat. And I love that you guys call it moisture. He's like,
I hate
I'm
that.
not thankful for moisture.
Exactly.
This I thought was interesting. Maybe people know about this, maybe they do not, but that there are virtual FSY sessions for U.S. Citizens and Canadian citizens. There is one the week of June 17th and one the week of July 29th. And it is as you think that it would be. If you
On
can't
Zoom.
get to college campus where FSY may be hosted in your area, you are online. And they said, they being the those in charge of the FSY, they're like, I don't know, are kids gonna like this? Are they gonna show up on time? Are they gonna be distracted on their computers and doing other things? Overwhelmingly popular.
it.
Being
Well,
able to visit with other kids in these like chat groups and be able to do these activities on their own and then bring them to show other people and making friendships and relationships with these people that they're able to do FSI with that they otherwise would not be able to, whether affordability or, you know, location approximation to where the actual thing is being held.
I'm also thinking about like health issues, even though the FSY does their best to accommodate, you know, things like, you know, they're ADA, you know, compliant and all of that. There's still things that are gonna not exclude, but make it so that it's impossible to go in person. And here's the thing, teenagers have lived through COVID, right? They did virtual school. My daughter did like a camp online in 2020 or 2021 or something. And that would normally be in person. And so I think they're used to it. Like they get it. They understand that this is a new way of getting to know people. And so I can see why it would be popular, why it would be a you know, an enticing opportunity because they know it. They know the drill. They did church online for how long, you know? I mean, these kids know the drill. They know it. So
well, and I just think it continues to echo my push, which is obviously the in-person FSY is the ideal.
Right.
It is a different experience. And I don't think anyone's like, yeah, my online FSY was just like being at a dance, you know, after, you know, it's not, it isn't.
Right.
But it is my push for let's do a like North America sacrament meeting with speakers that if you're traveling, if you need to be nourished by the good word of God in a this happened today form and or fashion, let's have a thing that people can be able to do. Let's have a seminary class that worst case scenario, and I still don't think this is that bad, is recorded.
Yeah.
And so if you're the football player, you're the dance captain, you're the whatever the thing is, you go, listen, I can't do it at that time. Credit wise, I can't afford the credit transition for this.
Yeah.
I'll do it from 6:30 to 7:30 in the evening when I have time is so much better than, no, I'm sorry. You're going to need
You
to
have to take fourth
release
period
time,
seminary.
Yeah, or you're going to have to be before school when you're barely,
Yeah.
you're causing contention in the home because you're not a morning person, physiologically not a morning person. You could do it at night, but we do this at this time. The rigidity within that, I mean, people just don't put up for it. Look no further than, but I'm not going to the office every day, 5 days a week.
Right.
I'm not doing that anymore.
No
4
way.
days, okay.
Well,
3 days, all right, maybe.
And there's precedent for all that you're saying. I mean, I do Institute online, and I have for a year and a half because I need to take Institute with school.
Mhm.
And I have an Institute class tonight at 8:15. You
Yeah.
know, we get together for 45 minutes, an hour, and we do our thing. The other thing is that there is some precedent for Zoom sacrament meeting that like predates COVID. I mean, you go up into the largest stake geographically is in
Mhm.
the Northwest Territories of Canada. It's huge, hundreds and
It's
hundreds of
huge.
miles.
Uh-huh.
And so there's no way in the wintertime for people to be able to get to Yellowknife, that's the stake, and Yellowknife, Canada. There's no way for people to get there in just a couple of hours. It's like plane rides, you know? And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
they have it online. And they do that in parts of Alaska as well, because you can't get to the North Pole, to North Pole, Alaska.
Yeah, you need
And
a sleigh and some reindeer.
Exactly. And the dress code is red
Yeah.
for that sacrament
Weird.
meeting. Don't show up in a black suit. It's red.
Yeah, no.
So there is some precedent. All I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah. As we get to the waning moments of this, did you do your last story?
No, you told me not to yet.
How about you do it now?
Okay. So KUTV, Channel 2 News here in Utah, has produced a really, really great documentary. It's called Truth and Distortion, the Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt story. You can find it on YouTube, and obviously the link will be in the show notes, but it is very well done. I have not finished it. It's about a half hour long, but I started it. And the thing that really drew me in is that I have not really heard the initial 911 call.
Yeah.
I've honestly tried to avoid it, but that's what they open with, is this 911 call from the neighbor of Jody Hildebrandt. And it was interesting to me, the neighbor who called, you actually hear the little boy, you hear his voice because he's asking him questions, but the caller gets very emotional about this. Like he gets choked up talking about everything that he sees on this young man. He's like, he's been bound, he's been held captive, he's got, bruises, he's got, all of this stuff. And just obviously the more that comes out about this story, the more heartbreaking it is. But the documentary is very well done. And obviously there's more that's going to continue to come out from the story. The other thing that I found out from this documentary that I didn't know about is that according to Kevin Franke, Ruby's husband, estranged husband, according to him and his attorneys, they've been separated since 2022.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting.
Yeah. You're letting me know of that. When I had insomnia, I watched that, and I forget the guy's name, and probably is LDS, the guy that called, because it's Ivins, Utah. It's a fairly LDS community down just outside of St. George.
He's got to have a connection of some kind.
Well,
probably.
I mean, he's a neighbor, and the guy,
right.
to the church.
Some connection to the church would be my guess. Yeah.
But the way that because the young boy, and I forget the Frankie boy's name, but he says, "Oh yeah, the choices that I made." You hear it in the 911 call that the kid's like, "Oh yeah, no, this is because I did this.
Yeah.
I was bound because I chose poorly," or something like that. The guy who called 911, who walks him through it, I can't imagine doing that phone call, but that guy is a champ. If you listen to it, the way that like he takes care of the kid, you hear at one point that he's like, "Here, have this banana and eat something, and we're not going to allow you to go back to that house."
Absolute hero.
Yeah. So cool.
And the other person that I want to give props to, and this is just my own personal, what do you call it? Ramyum-tum?
Sure. Get up on.
Get up on it. The 911 dispatcher, did amazing keeping her calm and keeping
Mhm.
her cool and talking this gentleman through everything. So my dad was a 911 dispatcher for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And that job is hard.
Mhm.
It is. People talk about first responders, and yes, everything that is said about police officers and paramedics and all of those, it's absolutely all legit. But I think 911 dispatchers tend to get left out of the conversation because they're the first ones to hear what's going on. You're literally talking people through their worst moments,
Yeah.
the worst things that they could ever experience. And when I was a kid, I would go to work with my dad sometimes, and they would
Ugh.
give me a set of headphones, and I could
Nope.
listen. It's there's no words, because you also don't really get closure either to
Yeah.
whatever is going on. You say, oh, the police are there. Okay, I'm gonna let you go. Next call, and I really felt like she did such a good job helping this man stay calm,
Mhm.
reassuring him. And she's like, I think we'll just send the paramedics just in case,
Yeah.
and he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's probably a good idea, and I just thought everybody involved in that for such a horrific circumstance, heroes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Okay. Well, there's a couple other stories that are going to make us do that very same thing. Then we'll wrap this thing out.
sounds great.
Let's go here. A former local leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this is in Logan, Utah, sentenced to 60 days in jail for sexting with a teenage girl in his congregation. He was part of the bishopric, not the bishop, but was in the ward's bishopric, had started to text this underage girl. This occurred between June 10th and July 14th of 2021. Began to sext her. The text turns inappropriate and sexually graphic. The victim's mother reported the actions to the bishop, who reportedly removed Andrew from his position in the ward. Through the investigation, detectives reported that Andrew was attempting to groom the girl to have sex with him. The communications ended before the relationship became physical. Hallelujah.
Yes.
During
Absolutely.
Monday's sentencing, defense attorney Shannon Demler said what Andrew did was legally and morally wrong. He asked the court for leniency, though, explaining how his client was remorseful and had no criminal history. Andrew told the victim he was sorry for what he did and hoped that she could forgive him. He also expressed sorrow for the pain that he had caused his family. 60 days in jail with work release, 24 months of probation, and ordered to be on the sex offender registry is the thing for that. Don't text underage people. I would never.
Right. Exactly.
Literally, like, and I'm not any type of that person, but
Right.
I would not even.
Nope.
Like, if ever, kitty corner to my house, there is a kid that has come over and visited with us before. His name is Kason. Great kid.
Mhm.
And if ever I have sent a message to him, always looped in someone else.
Yep.
In the conversation. Because you know
100%.
what? It's inappropriate to just do it one-on-one anyway. I think even if you're just like, hey, how's your day, pal? It's different if it's your kid.
Right. Right.
But anyone else, always someone loop in, or I think it's always inappropriate. I don't think that it is ever appropriate for an adult person to text an underage person if you are not related to them.
Sure.
Always,
I mean, there's
without exception to me.
Sure. And there's people who will like ask my kids to babysit,
Sure.
and they'll have me on the group, on the text, which is awesome. But there's like one where I'm like, it's okay. She's babysat for you for like 4 years.
Yep.
I'm okay with the mom reaching out to my daughter,
Sure.
but that's like the
But I
one
wouldn't.
exception.
I
Sure.
wouldn't. I
Sure.
wouldn't
Yeah.
ever. And I would tell you, man, better safe than
Absolutely.
husband
Because
gets
it does.
husband gets the phone and husband does something nefarious and she thinks that it's her, and then
Right.
that's disappeared. You don't have that if you have multiple people speaking into those.
I agree. I do agree with that. I literally, like I said, there's one person that I've said, sure, go ahead. And honestly, that was born out of circumstance because I was out of the country and she needed to ask my daughter if she could babysit. And I'm like, yeah, we're like 12 hours apart in time. So go ahead and just shoot her a text. And but that's my
But
own
that-
personal, you know,
Well, and she spoke
circumstance.
to you about it anyway.
Exactly.
So I think
That's
a
exactly.
thing. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And but yeah, no, it protects you as the adult. It protects us as the adult because they can never come back and say, well, so and so said this and
Yep.
I deleted the text, you know, or whatever. It's like, well, you know, because false accusations, they're not common, but they still happen, you know,
Sure.
and so you would never want to be falsely accused of anything.
Right. It just protects you from it. We
Mhm.
got to go quick. We got 2 more stories. We're
Are
gonna
they
end on a-
happy?
We're going to end on a funny note. What?
Are they happy?
Well, no, one of them is just whatever. One of them
Okay.
is Utah being Utah, and the other one is happy.
Okay, cool.
Davis School District. Davis is a county north of Salt Lake County, so it's probably more members of the church than Salt Lake County, but not quite Utah County. For
Okay.
those that wouldn't be from here, they have recently had a run of people saying that book shouldn't be in our libraries. Take that book out. And there were a series of, I think it was 22 books originally. And then people who wanted none of that to be banned, rather to have the discussion with your kids and have not books be banned, but allow kids to live in a world where these things exist and choose to interact with them or not interact with them. They said, well, then you also have to look at the Book of Mormon. You also have to look at the Bible. You also have to look at the Quran. And because there are some violent things within that, they will, that is Davis County School District, will retain the Book of Mormon as lawmakers are now going, okay, so the way that this law was, or the way that this particular sensitivity bill was worded, there are too many loopholes. Too many loopholes. We got to change this up. In Davis School District alone, 110 books, and you can find a link to all those books and this story in the show notes. Many of them fiction were subject to challenges. Of those, 69 were removed from all school libraries. 20 have been retained at all schools. 7 were retained at only high schools. 7 retained at high schools and junior high schools. And 1 was retained at elementary schools. There's still 6 books waiting for a decision. The Utah State Legislature in session right now, so likely you'll see that law completely change, but you can bet, and this is the cynic in me, but you can bet that religious books like the Book of Mormon, the Bible, and the Quran will not be banned from schools. However they have to craft the law. Yeah. And whether it should or shouldn't, I'm not making any sort of commentary about that. But they will say, oh no, but not this, but this.
Yeah.
It is why Utah, with everything with same-sex marriage, went so rapidly because Utah vehemently fought against it so hard. It would have taken much longer in the court system, but we said no. We've got to fight this. And all of the things. Let's take it home with a funny story.
Let's do it.
A funny and I thought recent story from the Church of Jesus, or from the Babylon Bee. But
your favorite publication.
It's actually a couple years old, but I don't think we mentioned it here. So I wanted to share this story with you. I will read it in its entirety because it's short, and then we will wrap this episode out. Member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints wishes there were a shorter way to say member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This from Provo, Utah. After an exhausting conversation with some friends about his church, local member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Liddell Ballard, wished there were a shorter way members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints could say they were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Latter-day Christians, thought Liddell, as he corralled his children into the minivan so they could get to a Chick-fil-A for dinner before the onslaught of all the other minivans. Christians in these latter days, Motkaj Colds, the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, abbreviated, while Liddell ordered a 12,000-piece chicken nugget crate. His one wife, Madeline, spelled Maddheleinne, suggested that they could come up with some sort of nickname inspired by ancient scriptures, such as the Bible or his religion's Book of Mormon, but no good nicknames jumped out at them. Finally, in a moment of inspired personal revelation, I swear to you, the Babylon Bee is so brilliant in the way that they write this. Finally, in a moment of inspired personal revelation, Liddell realized that he could shorten the name of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints by calling it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Oh my gosh. Please get somebody from the Babylon Bee on the Cultural Hall.
I'll try again. I've tried once.
Keep trying.
I will try again.
Try
They
again.
do such amazing work. We hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
That if you're not healthy enough to listen this week, you'll be able to listen next week.
And that when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety. If you are not a Patreon saint, please be a Patreon saint. Can I plead with you like that? We're just a couple guys eating some nachos. Maybe we're a large group of people, because I was just going to say maybe we're just a guy and a girl eating nachos, but we don't do that in our church because that's a date. We want to stay away from that, and rightfully so. Whatever the scenario is, patreon.com/The Cultural Hall. In the meantime, we'll be saving a seat for you
On the back row
of the
Cultural Hall.